A reminder to first write down your calculator answer, then determine sig figs, and do your rounding carefully. So what I'm going to do is to go through and write down the calculator answer for all of these, then we'll discuss the significant figures in each case. 8, 7, 7, 540.6604. And a reminder before we get started that sig fig rules are different based on whether you're doing addition, subtraction, or multiplication, division. Addition, subtraction are based on decimal places. Multiplication, division are based on the number of sig figs. So in these combination problems, make sure you keep these two categories straight. Addition, subtraction, we focus on decimal places. Multiplication, division, we focus on the number of significant figures. All right, so here we have 4 sig figs and 3 sig figs and the multiplication problem on the top. Okay, note that this initial 0 does not count as a significant figure. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 in the first number, 1, 2, 3 in the second number. Let's look at the numbers in the denominator. The last digit here is in the ones place, and the last digit in this first number is in the tenths place. So the worst decimal place is the ones place, and that means we're going, this number, if we reported it separately, would be rounded to the ones place. If we look at the result here, 490.1 minus 488, the calculator answer is 2.1. Now, if we round this to the ones place, that means the denominator, this whole denominator, is going to be appropriately expressed in 1 sig fig. So we have a number with 4 sig figs multiplied by 3 sig figs. So the numerator is appropriately expressed with 3 sig figs, the denominator with only 1 sig fig. So that means overall, we can only use 1 sig fig to express our answer. So we go back to the original calculator answer, and now we express it with just 1 sig fig, so we have our final answer. Let's look at this next problem. We have a number with 4 decimal places out to the 10,000ths. This goes out to 2 decimal places or out to the hundreds. So overall, this answer should have 2 decimal places. Remember, addition, subtraction is based on decimal places. Our result of this first part of the calculation should have 2 decimal places. So if we look at the result with 2 decimal places, we see that there are 3 sig figs involved in that part of the calculation. The second part of the calculation, there's 4 sig figs. Again, we see leading zeros. Leading zeros do not count as significant. So we are left with a calculation, a number going into the calculation that has 3 sig figs, multiplied by a number that has 4 sig figs. The result of this overall problem needs to contain 3 sig figs. So this leading zero does not count as significant. We have 1, 2, 3. We see the first number that we drop is below 5, so we just drop all of those numbers to the right. And our correct final answer is 0.122. In this next problem, let's look at our numerator first. We have a subtraction problem, so we know we're going to be focused on decimal places. Here we have a number with 1 decimal place, 2 decimal places. So our answer is going to be limited to 1 decimal place, which means our result here has 1 sig fig. In the denominator, we have a number with 3 sig figs and another number with 4 sig figs. In the overall problem, we see then we're limited to just 1 significant figure, which is how our final answer becomes 0.06. The last problem looks a little bit more complicated, but it's really not. We'll just walk through this. If we look at the first subtraction here, we subtract these numbers, we see the result is 4.36. Looking at decimal places, because this is subtraction, we see that we can only use 2 decimal places. This number to 2 decimal places is going to result in a number that has 3 sig figs. The next problem over, we do the addition, and again we see we should limit ourselves to 2 decimal places, which results in a number that has 3 sig figs. So now we can look at the overall problem. We see we have 2 numbers multiplied that each have 3 sig figs. So thus far 3 sig figs is our limit for our final answer. The bottom, there's also 2 numbers with each having 3 sig figs. Again, these leading zeros here don't count as significant. Therefore, our final answer is limited to 3 sig figs. So we have 1, 2, 3. We see the first number to be dropped is greater than 5, so we add 1 to the preceding column, and our correct final answer is 541. We will be soon moving on to problems that involve exact numbers. Now, in terms of significant figures, exact numbers don't affect sig figs, so you can just ignore the exact numbers in terms of determining the sig figs in your final answer. And the reason for that is they essentially contain an infinite number of sig figs because they're known with absolute precision.